country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangeul River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
On Wednesday, China held one of its largest ever military parades, with the country's leader Xi Jinping joined by North Korea leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin in a show of defiance against the West. It's the first time in 66 years that the leaders from the three countries appeared all together. Also in Beijing, Kim and Putin reaffirmed Pyongyang Moscow ties through their military cooperation. Putin thanked Kim for backing his war against Ukraine, which Kim called a brother's duty. The number of those who tied their knots in South Korea has been cut in half over the past 3 decades, while marriages involving foreigners more than doubled during the same period. We begin in China tonight. North Korea's Kim Jong-un and Russia's Vladimir Putin stood shoulder to shoulder with China's Xi Jinping at a mass military parade in Beijing to show off their united stance against the West. Our Shin Ha-young reports.
A military parade marking China's 80th Victory Day anniversary became the stage for the leaders of North Korea, China, and Russia to appear together for the first time in 66 years. The 70-minute-long celebration kicked off on Wednesday at 9 a.m. local time in Tiananmen Square, Beijing. About an hour before the official ceremony, around 25 world leaders began arriving at the venue, walking down a red carpet. Chinese President Xi Jinping greeted them, with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un entering just before Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was the last to arrive. Symbolic moments of solidarity among Pyongyang, Beijing, and Moscow continued throughout the event. With Xi in the center, Kim on his left, and Putin on his right, the three leaders walked up to the rostrum side by side, conversing with smiles. China marks September 3, 1945 as the day of its victory over Japan and the end of World War II. That's the day after Japan signed its unconditional surrender to China and the other allies.
History warns us that the destiny of humankind is closely interconnected. Only when nations and peoples treat each other as equals, live together in harmony, and support one another can we safeguard common security and eliminate the root causes of war. We must not allow the tragedies of history to repeat themselves.
During the military parade, China showcased strategic weapons for the first time, including the F-H-97 unmanned combat aircraft and the DF-61 intercontinental ballistic missile, reportedly an upgrade from the DF-41. A record 40,000 people took part in the parade, with 45 military units also marching through Tiananmen Square to display their strength. Meanwhile, from South Korea, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik attended the parade. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
So North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made his debut at this multilateral event, which experts view as a sharp change in his approach to diplomacy. He also made time to sit down with Russia's Putin. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Seong has more.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appeared to launch a new style of active diplomacy at China's Victory Day parade, seeking to establish Pyongyang's nuclear status in a coalition with Beijing and Moscow. Centre stage throughout the official events in Tiananmen Square, Kim constantly stood and was seated at the side of Chinese President Xi Jinping, with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the other side. Amid geopolitical tensions, the gathering of leaders from the three sides was a display of unity last seen 66 years ago in the Cold War era.
It seems intended to demonstrate the strengthening of North Korea and China's socialist solidarity as a form of counterbalance to the South Korea-US-Japan trilateral framework. Another aspect for Chairman Kim is to show he plays a key role within the North Korea-China-Russia alignment.
For Kim Jong-un, the optics could portray North Korea as part of a trio of nuclear powers, as he continues to seek recognition of Pyongyang as a nuclear state. Further showcasing their alignment, Kim and Putin held a bilateral summit on the sidelines following Wednesday's Victory Day events. Putin thanked Kim for deploying North Korean troops to aid Russia's war in Ukraine, which he described as a battle against neo-Nazism, while Kim responded that Pyongyang would do whatever it takes to support the Kremlin. The meeting between the two stretched on for 2.5 hours, during which Putin invited Kim to visit Russia. Kim's trip to Beijing also reaffirms the North's relations with China, but a formal trilateral summit between Kim, Xi and Putin is highly unlikely in the foreseeable future, according to experts, as the three sides are pursuing different strategic priorities.
Before a summit takes place, the agenda, the accompanying officials, and their positions on how the international community will respond must be closely aligned. Yet, their coalition can be likened to being in the same bed with different dreams. Also, there hasn't been enough time for preparations in terms of the agenda and lineup.
Kim arrived in Beijing on Tuesday by special train, his first visit in 6 years. What was more striking upon arrival was the unexpected appearance of Kim's daughter Kim Jue, seen standing directly behind her father when greeted by high-level Chinese officials.
When Kim Jong-un turned 8 years old, his father tapped him as his successor. However, as he was not given sufficient diplomatic training, he remained a leader of an isolated state until he participated in the summits with China, South Korea, and the United States in 2018. Determined not to pass down this unfortunate experience to his daughter, Kim Jong-un seems to have brought her to China, firmly resolved to introduce her early onto the diplomatic stage and provide her with systematic training.
The occasion marks Kim's first participation in a gathering of dozens of world leaders, a notable departure from the one-on-one summits that have defined his diplomacy so far. Kim also shook hands with South Korea's National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik during the parade and exchanged a brief conversation, according to the Speaker's office. The implications for inter-Korean and US-North Korea diplomacy remain uncertain. Observers say Kim might consult Xi about a potential summit with US President Donald Trump. Still, Seoul officials have cautioned against premature optimism, saying that Pyongyang has shown no signs of abandoning its nuclear program. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And China's Victory Day was more than a military parade, experts say. Rather, the event may have been strategically designed to serve President Xi's objectives. For more, we turn to our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung here in the studio with us. Welcome, Bo-kyung.
Tommy, thank you for having me.
So, Bo-kyung, why don't we start with some of the scenes from the military parade? The way that President Xi positioned each leaders or representatives from the invited countries, what does that suggest?
Right. So one of the main talking points of the military parade was how so-called three strongmen, Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un all stood together next to each other. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was positioned to Xi's left, while Russian President Vladimir Putin was standing on the right. Xi maintained this formation, standing side by side at the rostrum as well. Kim standing directly to the left of President Xi represents China's intentional gesture of exceptional courtesy toward North Korea. This is actually an unprecedented scene in North Korean history as well, as neither his grandfather Kim Il-sung nor his father Kim Jong-il ever stood directly beside a Chinese president at such a multilateral venue. In fact, if we compare it with the 70th anniversary of Victory Day in 2015, North Korea sent Workers' Party Secretary Choi Ryong-hae, who was positioned at the far end of the rostrum. One expert says the seating arrangement itself shows China's own message.
The fact that Kim was positioned on the left shows China has offered great level of courtesy, and it shows that China would be behind North Korea's back in various ongoing matters. This can be understood as diplomatic protocol, created through seating arrangements, where both sides had a previous mutual agreement.
So these seating arrangements were no random at all. Now, Bo-kyung, this is all part of President Xi's plan to, redesign this international order, isn't it?
Right. So though our focus today is the Victory Day military parade, we need to note that the message President Xi Jinping was trying to share with the world actually comes from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well, which took place ahead of the Victory Day.
Right.
There, he explicitly put the idea of creating a China-led growth model that goes against the Western ones. Also, during his speech on Victory Day, he said the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable missile and indirectly suggested that this is already happening by showcasing a wide range of weaponry. One of the most interesting shots was how Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi joined the SCO and joined hands with Xi. Such a scene between Modi and Xi standing together like old friends was hard to imagine, as the two countries had been in a hostile military standoff since 2020 with China's troop incursions into the mountainous Himalayan border with India. However, with Trump having slapped India with 50% import tariffs, this made Modi visit China for the first time in 7 years to show intimacy with Xi. Though Modi skipped the military parade, the same expert says the fact Modi visited China itself would be quite painful for the U.S. to see.
Modi's tightrope diplomacy for national interests, meeting Russian oil, having thorny issues with China, but still meeting with Xi to discuss various forms of cooperation, and continuously sending messages opposing U.S.-led unilateralism would be very uncomfortable for Trump.
And that is why there was a strong reaction from Trump ahead of the military parade. Bo-kyung, lastly, let's talk about this military parade. Of course, it's no military parade without weaponry. Now, it was more grand than ever, wasn't it?
Right. China showed off a wide range of weaponry at the military parade, as you said, that could make Washington really worry. It debuted the new type Dongfeng or DF-5C liquid-fueled intercontinental strategic nuclear missile. One expert said in the Global Times that it has an estimated range of more than 20,000 kilometers, being capable of reaching anywhere on the entire globe. Also shown was the DF-26D, medium-range ballistic missile nicknamed the Guam Killer, which can directly strike the U.S. military's key hub on Guam. Hypersonic DF-17 missiles, which are capable of neutralizing THAAD systems, and the DF-61, presumed to be a next-generation ICBM, were also included in the parade. The Yingji-21, or so-called YJ-21, a hypersonic anti-ship missile, and the Hongqi HQ-29 interceptor missile, referred to as the Chinese version of the Patriot, were also showcased. Now, fighter jets, including the J-35A, a stealth fighter that made its debut as a counterpart to the U.S. Navy's F-35C, showed the modernization of China's military as well.
All right, Bo-kyung, thanks for that coverage. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Lee Jae-myung is set to become the first South Korean leader to preside over a UN Security Council meeting, as South Korea assumes the presidency of the 50-member body this month. Seoul's foreign ministry says the president will chair an open debate on Wednesday, September 24th in New York, on the implications of AI on peace and stability. Now, ahead of this event, on September 9th, Seoul will convene a separate debate on UN peace operations, as this month the Council also deliberates on the conflicts in the Middle East. Seoul plans to further highlight women, peace and security, as well as the link between climate and conflict. President Lee will hold his second press conference next Thursday to mark his 100 days in office. A senior secretary for Public Relations and Communications, Lee Gi-yeon, said on Wednesday that the 90-minute event will bring together some 150 domestic and foreign journalists. Exact time and venue will be announced at a later date. And just like the president's first press conference in early July, the Q&A session will be divided into 3 categories: the economy, politics and foreign affairs, and society and culture. This is the first time a South Korean president will face the press twice in his first 100 days. In other news, South Korea's economy registered a rebound of 0.7% in the second quarter, exceeding initial forecasts. Now, strong exports and boosted private spending were behind the growth. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young reports.
South Korea's economy grew faster than earlier estimated in the second quarter, driven by robust exports and improved private consumption. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Wednesday revealed that the nation's real gross domestic product, a key economic indicator, grew by 0.7% quarter-on-quarter in the April to June period this year. This revised figure marks an improvement of 0.1 percentage point from the advanced estimate made in July. The growth also represents a significant rebound from a contraction experienced in the first quarter. Last week, the central bank upgraded its economic growth forecast for this year to 0.9%, up from its previous projection of 0.8%.
If the economy grows around 0.6% on quarter in the second half, we will be able to achieve 0.9% annual growth.
Breaking down the growth drivers, private spending saw a 0.5% increase, largely due to higher spending on automobiles and health services. Government expenditure also climbed 1.2%, boosted by increased healthcare benefits. However, construction investment contracted, primarily driven by a decrease in civil engineering projects. Facilities investment also declined due to reduced demand for ships and semiconductor manufacturing equipment. In terms of trade, exports surged by 4.5%, spurred by strong global demand for semiconductors and petroleum and chemical products. Imports were also up by 4.2%.
We expect domestic demand to continue its modest recovery, led by the government's supplementary budget execution and better consumer sentiment. However, while exports showed a favorable trend in July and August, we anticipate growth to gradually slow as the impact of U.S. tariff impositions expands.
Meanwhile, the country's gross national income saw a 2% increase, with real GNI growing by 1%. This was largely due to improved terms of trade, which led to a reduction in real trade losses. 문지영, Arirang News.
South Korea has gone through a dramatic drop in demographics over the past 3 decades, in both the number of newlyweds and newborns. Park Jun-han has the details.
The number of marriages in South Korea has almost halved over the past 30 years, sounding the alarm on the severity of the population crisis already underway. Statistics Korea released a report on Wednesday called Changes in Marriage and Birth Rates in Korea over the past 30 years. According to the data, marriages peaked at 435,000 in 1996, but fell steadily to a record low of 192,000 in 2022, before modest rebounds to 194,000 in 2023 and 222,000 in 2024. This is an over 44% decline from nearly 400,000 back in 1995. The number of marriages with foreign spouses in South Korea, however, surged some 54%, rising from 13,500 in 1995 to 20,800 in 2024. As of 2024, marriages with foreign spouses account for 9.3% of all unions. The average age at first marriage has also sharply climbed. From 28.4 years old for men and 25.3 years old for women in 1995, the average age at first marriage rose to 33.9 for men and 31.6 for women in 2024. This is up 5.5 and 6.2 years respectively. Births over the past 30 years have declined even more sharply. From 715,000 in 1995 to 238,000 in 2024, it saw a drop of over 66% after bottoming at 230,000 in 2023. A senior researcher at the Population Policy Research Center claimed that the continuous decline in South Korea's young population will shrink the country's overall societal structure, leading to crises.
The situation can be summed up in 3 points: a shrinking young population, an aging society, and rising political conflicts driven by growing disparities. If this continues, more people will inevitably flock to the metropolitan area, while regional areas face not only a population decline, but also a drop in the quality of human resources, making recovery extremely difficult. We are now at a critical juncture that calls for decisive political action.
Looking at changes in the total fertility rate among OECD countries from 1995 to 2023, South Korea is now the only country where it has fallen by more than 50%, sounding a serious alarm for the nation's future sustainability. 박준환, Arirang News.
And just when we thought we are ready to welcome back cooler weather, the good old Seoul Fashion Week is back for its 2026 spring-summer season. Our Park Hyubin has a glimpse of the latest styles.
Fashion, stars, and a runway by the palace walls. Seoul Fashion Week is back for its 2026 spring-summer season, offering a glimpse of the trends that will shape styles in the coming year. Marking its 25th anniversary, this year's event goes beyond the traditional venue at Dongdaemun Design Plaza, spreading across the entire city of Seoul. And the week began right here along the stone walls of Deoksugung Palace with a striking opening show by Anderson Bell.
I've always followed Anderson Bell, and since the show is held here along the Deoksugung Palace walls, I was really excited to come.
I've been attending the event for about 3 or 4 years now. I didn't want to miss it this time either. The runway today is what I'm looking forward to most, especially because it's a brand I've always liked.
Before the runway began, the area around the palace was already filled with stars and fans alike. On the photo wall, big names like Tomorrow by Together's Hyunin Kai, Hearts to Hearts Ian and Tsiu, and IVE's Gaeul drew the crowds. Once the opening runway show kicked off, Anderson Bell unveiled its 2026 spring-summer collection under the theme Surfed Clash. The pieces highlighted unexpected color matches, layered silhouettes that looked effortless yet calculated, and deconstructed details with a worn-in edge. And Deoksugung Palace is not the only iconic location to serve as a backdrop. Throughout the week, 27 Korean designer brands take turns presenting their collections at Seoul landmarks, including the Oil Tank Culture Park, Heungcheonsa Temple, and of course, Dongdaemun Design Plaza. Adding a global touch, Berlin Fashion Week also joined Seoul Fashion Week for the first time, showcasing its official Berlin showroom.
The event runs until this Sunday, turning Seoul into a global fashion city. Park Hyubin, Arirang News.
Netflix sensation K-pop Demon Hunters has become the most watched title on the platform. According to the streaming service, the animation has been streamed over 266 million times, and making it the top content of all time on Netflix. In fact, it surpassed Squid Game Season 1, which previously held the top spot in the show category. Meanwhile, its original soundtrack Golden continues to dominate the US Billboard Hot 100 chart, holding the #1 spot for the 3rd straight week.
It's getting a little cooler in the morning and evening, but the daytime heat is still raging. Most areas exceeded 30 degrees Celsius in the middle of the day today, but the East Coast, where easterly winds are blowing, stayed below 30 degrees and felt relatively cooler. Showers will pass throughout the southern parts of Gyeonggi-do province and southern parts of the Chungcheong-do provinces until tonight. The expected amount of rain is around 5 to 60 millimeters. Tomorrow there will be rain in the center areas and showers in the south again. Tomorrow, Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Daegu will start off at 24 degrees. Highs will only rise to 29 degrees in Seoul, Gwangju, and Jeju at around 32 degrees. Throughout this week, frequent showers are expected across the country. From Saturday afternoon, rain is forecast again. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
To set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
안녕하세요. 방크에서 활동하는 박지은 연구원입니다. 한글은 600년의 역사를 가진 우리나라 고유의 문자인데요. 한글에 대해 잘 모르는 분도 많고 또 잘못된 정보를 접한 분도 꽤 있더라고요. 사이버 외교사절 딴 방크의 일원으로서 제가 한글에 대한 올바른 정보를 전달해 드릴게요. 한글은 조선 4대 왕인 세종대왕이 1443년에 창제한 글자예요. 한글은 자음과 모음으로 구성되어 있는데요. 자음은 입술, 이, 목구멍과 같이 발음 기관의 모양이나 그 움직임을 본떠 만들었고요. 모음은 하늘, 땅, 사람을 본떠 만들었답니다. 한글의 창제 원리와 사용법을 써놓은 훈민정음 해례본은 1962년 대한민국 국보로 지정되었고 1997년 유네스코 세계기록유산으로 등재되었습니다. 창적이고 과학적이며 아름다운 문자인 한글, 한국인의 위대한 문화유산입니다. 한국 바로 알리기, 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made a rare overseas appearance, joining China's Victory Day celebrations in Beijing. It's the first time in over 6 decades that a North Korean leader has attended a Chinese parade, underscoring the moment's symbolism. Kim was seen alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the first such gathering since the Cold War. Now, on the sidelines, Kim and Putin also held a bilateral summit where Putin thanked North Korean troops for fighting in Ukraine and pledged new agreements. Amid these developments, the question now is what this rare moment of unity means for the Korean Peninsula and the wider region. To help us unpack this, we're joined in the studio by Dr. Ko Myung-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Welcome back, Dr. Ko.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us online is Frank Januzzi, President and CEO at the Marine and Mike Mansfield Foundation. Good to see you again.
Good evening.
So let's begin our discussion with Dr. Go. The big picture first. So North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attended China's Victory Day parade. Dr. Go, tell us about the significance and the background of Kim's latest visit.
Well, I think this is a China-driven event. It's not so much that North Koreans are requesting to come to the Victory Day parade. The Chinese want to bring not just North Korea, but also Russia together so that they can project the image that China is standing shoulder to shoulder with rogue states such as Russia and North Korea at this juncture. And this is a very interesting change of, I would say, pace on the part of China. The reason why I say this is because China wanted to keep some distance from North Korea especially, and also from Russia. And the reason was because China didn't want to be accused of supporting Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, as well as North Korea's illicit nuclear program. And also, China didn't want to be seen siding with this narrative that North Korea was pushing, which is that right now we're living in the era of a new Cold War, meaning that there's going to be an existential confrontation between China on one hand and the United States on the other. So China didn't want to rationalize the U.S. decoupling strategy against it. So wanted to stay away from this narrative, from Pyongyang, from Moscow. But now China suddenly has decided that they're going to receive North Korea with open arms. And I think this is a part of Chinese strategic communication to show to the United States and the West that China is now no longer going to essentially receive the punches. Now it's going to respond, and the way it's going to respond is by aligning itself with Russia and North Korea, essentially saying that it subscribes now to North Korea's narrative of a new Cold War, an era of confrontation. But it doesn't mean that China is going to start a confrontation with the United States from now. Essentially, I think it's leaving some room for the United States and the West to intervene and essentially step back from a potential conflict with China. So it's a diplomatic move on China on many different levels. So there's a multiple positioning, not just by China, but also by North Korea and Russia. So it's a very symbolic event.
So it was definitely a historic moment indeed. Now, building on this, just before the visit, North Korea revealed Kim Jong-un's inspection of a missile production line and an ICBM research facility, and even made public the details of his train departure. Mr. Januzzi, why do you think Pyongyang unusually disclosed Kim's movements so quickly this time around?
Well, building off of Professor Goh's comments, with which I agree, I think what we're seeing right now is a more confident North Korea on the global stage. North Korea is probably anticipating symmetry diplomacy in the future with the United States. But prior to doing that, he is securing all of his flanks. He is strengthening his relationship with China. He has already developed a strategic relationship with Russia, and his willingness to both publicize his travel schedule and also show off his growing military capabilities, including next generations of missiles. All of this speaks to a North Korea striding confidently on the global stage. Kim Jong-un has matured as a leader, and standing beside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin in Moscow was really a great coming out party for Kim Jong-un on the global stage. So I think that what you're seeing is positioning by North Korea in preparation for at least resuming some form of dialogue with the United States, but doing it from a position of strength. Secure in the knowledge that he has a Russian ally who will provide military equipment and support, and a Chinese ally who is trying to really get back in the game, having been a bit isolated from relations with North Korea due to COVID and due to North Korea's own reluctance to take instructions from Beijing.
Right, so we're now dealing with a more confident North Korea, and we'll have to look into what strategic message it really wants to send. Now, adding to this intrigue, what was noticeable was that Kim Jong-un's daughter, Kim Jue, was also accompanied with him on his trip to China. What can we read into this companionment?
Well, as your report rightly pointed out, Kim Jong-un wishes to ensure that the country has a succession plan in place. But I would argue that this does not necessarily mean that Kim Jue will be the successor. I think really what is being announced here is that North Korea has a successor if required. And he is also clearly someone, Kim Jong-un, who has a close circle of confidants, and that begins with family first. So Kim Jue is being groomed for a global role, but whether that role will include being the successor as leader of North Korea, I think it's really premature to say.
So we cannot be 100% sure, but it seems to be a striking presence. She seems to be having a striking presence there in Beijing. Now, let's shift to China's role, Dr. Goh. As you've mentioned, this trip marks Kim's first visit to China in more than 6 years. Why do you think China is now kind of seeking more to restore ties with North Korea? And do you see this once distant relationship kind of improve, especially after closer ties between North Korea and Russia?
So I don't think there's a conflict over North Korea between China and Russia. I don't think there's a competition to show who's a better friend of North Korea. I think the relationship between China and North Korea weren't that bad to begin with. I think in terms of substance, I don't think China ever tried to penalize North Korea, for instance, economically, for having aligned with Russia because of North Korea aiding Russia's effort in Ukraine. It was only happening at the symbolic level, at the communicative level, meaning China clearly, intentionally tried to avoid giving the perception that it was aligning with North Korea. So that was, in many ways, exaggerated, as if the relationship between Pyongyang and Beijing had deteriorated. So it shows right now that when China needs North Korea, and they get together very quickly, and showing that at the substantive level, the relationship wasn't ever bad between the two countries. So, but then the timing is very interesting. I think the timing shows that China is engaged in this policy inflection point. It's going to issue an external policy towards the United States. We have to pay attention to the joint communique issued at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Tianjin, and the communique was all about condemning the United States and blaming the United States for the current instability in the world stage. So essentially, China is rallying together like-minded states behind it in a formula of anti-Americanism. And there are no better countries, examples of anti-Americanism than Russia and North Korea at this time. So I think this is a strong reason why China wanted to have both Russia and North Korea in Tiananmen Square for the parade.
Right, so definitely a sign of a more closer, stronger alignment between the three countries. Now, like Dr. Go has mentioned, the attention was really focused on this rare gathering of the leaders of North Korea, China, and Russia at the parade. And like I said, it's been more than 6 decades since the three sides actually stood together. Mr. Januzzi, what message did this photo op kind of send to the international community? Do you think should this be seen as a formal declaration of a new trilateral alignment?
Well, I'm struck by the deep contrast between a United States, which has imposed tariffs on its closest allies, South Korea, Japan, the EU, has imposed severe tariffs on India, a country which the United States, until very recently, had been courting quite aggressively to try to bring India into the Western camp, aligning with India and Japan and Australia through the Quad mechanism. I'm struck by the contrast between America alone, essentially battling its closest friends, Canada, Mexico, the EU, Korea, Japan, on the economic front, and the scene in Beijing, where you have Xi Jinping attempting to be the leader of essentially a new global order, aligned in anti-American sentiment, with the leaders of Russia, India, North Korea, and other countries. And what strikes me most about this contrast is that, in truth, there are still strategic differences among India, China, Russia. These three countries are not natural allies. In fact, in many ways, economically and politically, they have traditionally been competitors or even adversaries. And yet, in this moment in time, they are positioning themselves in solidarity against an America that increasingly looks isolated on the global stage. So I think what we are witnessing is the formation of a new global order, with Beijing asserting leadership on the global stage. But I believe that that order is not consolidated because it does not rest on a strong strategic foundation of shared values and interests among India, China, and Russia. So there is still time for the United States and other countries to try to avoid a kind of a new Cold War structure of power blocks, one led by the United States and the other by China. And I think that what we may see in the coming months is a pivot by the United States to reach out to China to see if they cannot, in fact, repair relations somewhat and try to avoid consolidating that Beijing-led power bloc.
So we'll keep tabs on how that flows. Now, alongside this parade, another very important event, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and President Putin also held a bilateral summit, their first in over a year. And there, President Putin took the occasion to thank North Korean troops and also spoke of new agreements. Dr. Go, how significant was this summit, and what does this actually tell about the deepening ties between the two countries?
I think there's a tendency in Russia and North Korea in mirroring what the United States and South Korea do. So I think the recent summit the summit that took place today between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, I think it's a carbon copy of the recently very successfully held summit between President Lee Jae-myung and President Trump. So we have to remember that the Russians and North Koreans use the term comprehensive strategic partnership between these two countries exactly echoes the way South Korea and the United States characterize their alliance, which is a comprehensive strategic alliance. So you can easily guess what kind of agreements the Russia and North Korea have probably reached in today's summit. It probably reflects or mirrors the agreements that the South Korea and the United States reached on the summit in Washington. So basically, probably agreement in more like a technological cooperation, joint research in cutting technology, probably some sort of cooperation when it comes to economic production, munition production, and so forth. So we have to understand that but at the same time, it doesn't mean that the Russians and North Koreans are going to live up to the agreements they signed today. There's a lot of bluffing on the part of countries like Russia and North Korea. And here, again, we have to understand that the focus here lies with mirroring what South Korea and the United States have just done. So North Korea especially wants to show to South Korea and the United States that they too have a very important close blood tie ally in the form of Russia, and they are developing very strong ties with them, trying to show to the United States and South Korea that North Korea doesn't need them anymore for dialogue, for stability, for economic development. So, but then at the same time, we know Russia is not big enough, powerful enough, rich enough to provide for what North Korea really seeks, which is security guarantees and economic guarantees. So North Korea needs South Korea and the United States. So I think we have to understand that all these events that are taking place between North Korea and its partners outside of Korean Peninsula is very much a posturing on the part of North Korea, positioning itself for a more advantageous negotiation position down the road.
Right. So a lot of strategy from North Korea's side. And stepping a little bit back, so this is Kim Jong-un's debut on this multilateral diplomatic stage. I wonder, since you're an expert in this field, how did you evaluate his performance in this stage, and how do you expect Kim to embark on broader diplomatic pushes?
Well, it's not very complicated to analyze Kim Jong-un's motivation in coming to this multilateral meeting. I mean, oftentimes there's this consensus that Kim Jong-un tends to turn down invitation to multilateral gatherings, and the reason is because he wants the spotlight to be on him. And often the reason is because Kim Jong-un, the regime, needs this kind of events to showcase how important he is to the domestic audience. So if he's shown in a clip where he's standing far apart from other leaders, in a corner, looking like he's more of isolated from the rest of from his peers, it's not going to look too good for the domestic audience. So he needs a guarantee that he will receive a lot of spotlight. And that's exactly the Chinese have provided. So he was standing shoulder to shoulder with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin at the podium at a very important event for China. So this is exactly the kind of event that he was seeking to get from his external engagements. He finally got it, and that's why he came.
So this may be the start of Kim, trying to keep more active in multilateral diplomacy. Now, let's also turn to South Korea's role. So unlike most U.S. allies, which either sent low-level envoys or stayed away, Seoul actually dispatched National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik to the Victory Day ceremony. Mr. Januzzi, does this reflect the Lee administration's pragmatic diplomacy? And in the midst of intensifying great power rivalry, what kind of foreign policy direction should Seoul actually pursue?
Well, I was honored to see President Lee when he arrived in Washington just about a week ago. And I was struck by his remarks at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where President Lee emphasized the partnership with the United States, of course, but also spoke warmly of the importance of Korea-Japan relations and embraced, I think, the spirit of Camp David of U.S., ROK, Japan trilateralism. So what I interpret from South Korea's participation, albeit not at the top level in Beijing's celebrations, is a very pragmatic and frankly a very wise and strategic move by South Korea to acknowledge the importance of the South Korea-China relationship, even as it aligns closely with the United States and to a lesser degree with Japan in terms of its security interests. I think this is wise and pragmatic in part because President Lee is anticipating a move by President Trump as early as this fall to repair relations with China to some degree, to reduce the tariffs on Chinese products, and strategically put the U.S.-China relationship on a better footing. So in essence, what President Lee is doing here in a pragmatic and smart way is to prepare the ground for a improved China-South Korea relationship, anticipating that that is exactly where the United States is going to end up, perhaps as early as the end of this year. So I wouldn't read too much into it. It's not South Korea aligning with China. In fact, what it is doing, South Korea is doing, is ensuring that it can maintain sound relations with its largest trading partner, the People's Republic of China, even as it aligns closely with the United States and even with Japan to preserve its vital national security interests.
So sending this high-level figure was a bold, strategic, and pragmatic approach from Seoul's part. Now, finally...
All of the above.
All of the above. Thank you for that. So, Dr. Go, with Kim Jong-un's visit to China, many argue that the South Korean government must now kind of reshape its policy on North Korea. What do you think about this? How should Seoul actually respond to a North Korea that's seeking to kind of expand into multilateral diplomacy?
No, I think we should be patient. First of all, North Korea is making very clear that it's not interested in inter-Korean dialogue at the moment. It's very much invested in expanding relations with China and Russia. So there's no point for South Korea to step in and argue and trying to convince North Korea that it should come back to the inter-Korean dialogue stage, because it's not going to be effective at all. So instead, I think South Korea should be waiting for the right time. And here, I think there's a hint that came up during the summit between President Lee and President Trump, which is the United States. I think there's alignment of interest and views when it comes to North Korea between Washington and Seoul at the moment. And President Trump essentially verbally and in front of cameras agreed to assume the role of the mediator, the peacemaker. So, and we know that despite all the criticism that North Korea reserves for South Korea, it's just saving those for President Trump. I mean, it's not refraining from criticizing President Trump. So there's clearly a potential for U.S.-North Korea dialogue down the road, clearly North Korea is, as Mr. Januzzi has pointed out, North Korea, despite what he says on the surface, is interested and waiting for the prospect of a dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang. So I think supporting the dialogue, it's going to be important, not just because it makes moral sense, but also makes a political sense, because one of the fears that South Korea has is so-called Korea passing, meaning bypassing South Korea when the United States and North Korea engage in dialogue bilaterally excluding South Korea. So by supporting the effort by President Trump in engaging North Korea, we minimize such a risk. So there's the first political benefit. Second is that by showing that to the North Koreans that the United States will never exclude South Korea from the engagement initiative, then it's going to empower South Korea's negotiation position with North Korea. So paradoxically speaking, approaching North Korea is not going to lead to an inter-Korean dialogue, but then tightening a dialogue with the United States on North Korea is going to empower South Korea's hands in this regard.
So staying aligned with Washington's strategies and also supporting dialogue between the two countries would be helpful, definitely. I'm afraid we'll have to conclude our discussion right here. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Go.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Januzzi, we appreciate it.
감사합니다.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.